AJ Kelsall. How you doing, AJ?
Great. How are you today, Carl?
Good.
Happy to be on with the Tampa poker legend.
We have a lot of questions for you today. I don't know how we're going to fit this in an hour, but we'll do our best. Let's start with the first question. Just give us a little bit of background, how you started with the game. I was looking at your Hand and Mob yesterday. Quite the list. Let me pull it up here real quick. Your first recorded score, I think it was back in 2001, I believe.
That's about right. But both of those are kind of interesting stories. So I'll go into the first part first, is how I started playing. I was in the golf business. I was a golf pro in my 20s. So I never played any poker with like family members or in college or anything like that. Never played literally at all. I went out on a dinner cruise boat out of Clearwater with some friends of mine. We played blackjack and had a few drinks, etc. And one of the guys got into a poker game, and the poker game was 2 to 10 7-card stud, where you could bet $2 to $10 on any street. And I got in there to play with him. I just bought it for $100, and I got in the fight. He basically was teaching me as we went. I literally didn't know what beat what. I didn't know what flush beat a straight. Had no idea what I was doing. This is probably year 2000. I was about 31 or 32. I went back on the same cruise a couple times when we played the same game. I bought a couple books at Barnes & Noble back in the day. You'd buy a couple poker books, and I kind of taught myself a little bit. And about the third or fourth time I went out by myself. And the manager of the boat, after we started going out into the water, which you have to go like an hour in international waters to start the games, he came up and said to me, we didn't have that 2 to 10 7-card stud game today. We only have 6-12 Hold'em. And I said, what's that? And he said, Hold'em. Like, you don't know Hold'em? I said, I have no idea. So I sat next to him that night. He taught me what the flop, turn, and river, and the betting. And we played 6-12 limit Hold'em. So $6, on the flop, and then 12 on the turn and river. And I won about $200 that night, never having played before. And then obviously back to Barnes & Noble to buy some Hold'em books. And then that kind of continued for about 6 months, where I went out on that cruise maybe every other Friday night. Got invited to a couple home games that were 10-20 limit. Hold'em, went to them. And then, things have obviously progressed from there, but that's how I learned, right from scratch, and just teaching myself with books, from the bookstore.
So first time you sat down at the table, you had no clue what poker was. You just winged it the first
Literally
time.
No clue. I mean, I've always been a gambler, like on, in my 20s on sports, and I did, numerous Vegas trips like blackjack and craps and that kind of stuff, but I just never played poker.
So what attracted you to poker? Sorry. So what attracted you to poker?
I don't know. Once I started playing, I really liked it. I think I realized pretty early on from reading the books that my math background was going to help me a lot. I always was looking for, even in the job world, I was always looking if I was going to have some regular 9-to-5 job, I'm much better with math than English. I always got A's in all my math classes, B's and C's in all my English classes. And, obviously poker, having a good math background is very helpful.
So you've always been good with math?
Yeah, always got A's in every math class I ever took, and, no A's in anything else.
So when you say books, I remember back in those days, the books were, I think when Super System came out, it was like, when you read Super System, you thought you're going to go to the casino and just crush everything. And,
and all the 2+2 type stuff, like the Slansky and Malmuth, Dan Harrington, there was a guy that went out on those boats on Friday night that would bring me a book. Friday night, I would take it back with me for the week, and I would bring it back to him a week or two later. So I bought some, and then he would bring me one that he thought would help me, and I would take it back to him. And he was kind of like my personal library when I first started playing.
So that's the start. You went on the boat, you fired the first bullet, and fell in love with the game. Then started reading books. Okay, so this is 2001. I see your first recorded score is March of 2001. You got 2,400. Annual Jack Binion's World Poker Open, Tunica.
Yeah, that was probably the second. That series of tournaments was probably the second or third biggest set of tournaments when I first started playing. It was the World Series of Poker. The U.S. Poker Championships were at the Taj Mahal in Atlantic City, and then the World Poker Open, Jack Binion's thing, was in Tunica. That was like the 3 series people went to. And I'd never really played any tournaments before. I mostly just.
Where did you live at the time?
In Tampa.
In Tampa.
Tampa, I actually had a place back then, but I joke around that I say I'm HBC, which I call homeless by choice. Which is staying with Ian a lot of times when I'm in Tampa, at the Hard Rock a little bit maybe, and then obviously I travel quite a bit for poker. So Just to go back to answer your other question about the 2001 my Hendon mob, probably about at least 80, maybe up to 90%. I haven't looked at it recently. Of my Hendon mob started in 2017, like you said, even though I started playing in 2001. Because from 2001 to 2017 of my poker hours, probably 90%, maybe 95% of those were cash games. I would play tournaments just as like a fun thing with a buddy on a trip, or I'd go maybe twice a year for a week and play some tournaments somewhere, and I never played in local ones, really, just all cash games.
So you were firing like some tournaments here and there, but it wasn't full time. You were just mostly playing cash and just firing a few tournaments here and there.
Yep, exactly. So I always thought back then, and I still think this now, when you really need the money and you're let's say like a person with a regular job, you're living check to check, let's say, and you really need the money for your bills. Cash games are a lot more consistent. You can plan your hours a lot more. Where tournaments, as we all know, they can be very lucrative when you hit, but you can go through long dry spells. And, if the rent's due in 2 weeks and you're going to play 14 tournaments the next 14 days, you very easily could go for 14. But if you play 14 cash game sessions, I'm not saying you can't lose over that time, but you have a much better chance of showing a profit in the short run playing cash games, I feel like.
100%. So that was my next question. I saw a little like from 2001 to 2017, you weren't averaging that much a year. And then something happened in 2017. And then your results started, here, let me see.
Yeah.
I'm pulling it up right now. Yeah, from 2001 to 2017, your best year was like 164 in 2014, but nothing crazy. Then 2017 rolls over and you have 300K, then 2018, 300K. Everything is like over 300K. COVID, of course, we didn't play much. And then 2021, 191. Then 2023 was a sick year for you. I did the math for 2023. I think you made like I did 597K in 2023. Tell us a little bit about the 2023 year. How did that go? And I want to ask you later on about the WSOP. For somebody like a newcomer to the WSOP, what advice you have? But tell us a little bit about 2023
just to back up one part of that, 2014. Yeah. Again, I really hadn't played very many tournaments except for a few a year up till that. So that's why, you're seeing not much activity on the Hendon mob from 2001 to 2017. But in 2014, the tournament that just went past here, the Winter Poker Open, I won the main event of that. And that was the first like real decent tournament I ever won. I think it was about 120 grand or something in that range.
What year was that?
That was 2014. So I think December 2014, or it might have been 2015, but you just said 2014 was like 160 grand. And almost all that was that tournament because, again, I didn't play a lot of tournaments at that time. So that kind of got me more interested in tournaments a little bit. And I also was kind of reaching the point of life where I didn't, quote, need to play every day, or I didn't need to grind the cash games as much. And I started enjoying the tournaments more. I also started picking up mixed games a little bit at that point. And that's kind of really where things transitioned from being basically a sole cash game player through like 2014, 15 to playing a lot more tournaments starting in 2016 and 17 type area. So.
Okay, since we're talking about cash and tournaments, what are some of the adjustments that you make? And what are the adjustments? And second, when did you start actually being a consistent winner in cash? Like what year was like the change?
I guess that's hard to answer because for me it's so long ago. You're asking these other guys like Clyde, and he's talking in months. I'm talking in this is 25 years ago. But I'd say after the first couple of years, I was winning year to year in cash games. I mean, I'm not one to keep like exact records of everything I've ever done, so I don't even have that stuff anymore. But I definitely remember the first year going, and it was like any other losing style of gambling that I had done, like sports betting and all the other losing gambling that people do. It just felt like another way to lose gambling that I enjoyed, have a few beers, whatever. And then the more that I learned, after a couple of years, I was definitely going to these 10-20 limit home game type games that I told you about. I was definitely consistently winning by that point.
As far as adjustment between cash and tournaments, what's the major adjustment that somebody should do for the people that are watching right now that play cash, want to transfer to tournaments, or play tournaments, want to transfer to cash? What's the biggest adjustment you think they should make?
Yeah, I really think it's more important in cash to not be a tilter. Because in cash you can just keep going in your pocket and buying it, buy more chips, and just obviously things can go south. In tournaments, obviously you can rebuy in the tournament, but your loss is kind of capped by your buy-in. Especially once the registration's over, you get knocked out, they don't let you buy any more chips, so you have to go home. So it's for someone who's a tilter, I feel like tournaments are a little bit better. Just in general, one of my theories, and a lot of people don't agree with this, I know you don't really agree with it, but maybe we can discuss it. I really think the difference between cash and tournaments is overrated. There's obviously differences. There's things in tournaments, ICM, and you play differently in the beginning of the tournament than at the end, where cash games kind of all the same. The blind never changes. It's obviously differences, but in the end, we all still have chips in front of us. There's going to be a flop, a turn in the river. And we're trying to bet whatever we're doing to try to get more chips, and we don't want to lose the chips we have. And that's really, it's more similar than people make it out. So if you come and tell me that you're a great cash player, but you're a bad tournament player, I can buy that a little bit, because there is a lot more to tournaments and a lot more to understanding, how to play with certain blind certain stacks and certain times of the tournament, ICM, all that kind of stuff. But to me, if you tell me, you and I have had this discussion, if you think that you're a very good tournament player and you're not a good cash game player, I've never understood that, because there really isn't anything about cash games that goes on that if you are a good tournament player that you shouldn't be able to do, or you shouldn't be able to adjust to. It's just, again, that's my opinion, but I think it's,
that's a very good point. You're right. It's a similar game. The only difference is short stack play. Like, you have to be good at short stacking, and of course, there's different dynamics in the tournament. You're always going to be deep in a cash game, and different hands. Like, some hands gain value in a cash game and lose value in a tournament. So when you're deep, like hands like pocket pairs and stuff, flop in sets, when you're deep stack, of course it's gonna have way more value than like ace king, ace queen, especially the offsuit.
So the beginning of the tournament, maybe I should restate, the beginning of the tournament is very similar to a cash game, because you're 100 big blinds deep or 200 big blinds deep or whatever it is.
100%. It's similar, because you have 100 or 150 big blinds, so it's playing like a cash game basically.
Right.
The other thing is structure. Like, some people have problems with structure. I like a beginning, middle, and end, so I know when to start, and I know when the tournament ends, like if I bust out or finish at the final table. So that's the end of the tournament, I go home. In a cash game, you have to be you have to be disciplined. You have to know when to start and when to finish. A lot of players have a problem of leaving the table. They'll be up $1,000 or $1,200. They stay at the table and then donate it all back, which could happen. It's lack of discipline, basically. That's something that could be worked on. As far as strategy, like I said, it's mostly short stacking. You're never going to be short. Like, you're never going to have to study charts for like under 20 big blinds or 15 big blinds, what hands you're opening, what all this dynamic. It doesn't happen in a cash game.
So the points that you're making are kind of what I was saying, that if you're good at tournaments, okay, all the things that are good at tournament, you should be good at cash. If you're good at cash, yes, there's a lot more to tournaments you need to learn. You're not just going to jump right in and be a tournament crusher. But if you are a tournament crusher, you should still be able to play cash games if you need the side money or whatever. You shouldn't, be bad at cash games if you're a good tournament player, to me.
I never looked at it like that, but it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I agree. So if you're good at tournaments, you should be good at cash. But if you're good at cash, you're not necessarily a good tournament player because of the different dynamics, and you have to, study. That's a good point to look at it. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So
again, someone like you, who's a local tournament crusher, should be able to go jump in the 2-5 game when nothing else is going on, and you should be making money doing that, which I think you've done a little bit over the time, more than you did 3 or 4 or 5 years ago when we first met, I think, right?
Cash. I tried to. It's hard to be good at both because it's so time consuming. You would have to live in the casino, because if you're grinding 5-6 hours in tournament, and then having in the back of your mind that if you bust, you're going to go jump in a cash game, It's not good to have a plan B when you're playing a tournament. It's
That's
not.
true.
It shouldn't be a big factor, but it's a little bit of a factor that you're always thinking like, oh, if I bust the tournament, I can go play cash. But having that in the back of your mind kind of affects your tournament play a little bit. It shouldn't that much.
I never like to mix it on the day. Like, I don't like to bust the tournament then go play cash, because you're already going to the cash game. You're already a little bit tilted from the tournament, even if you're not a tilter. You know, everyone tilts a little bit, whether they want to admit it or not. So if you lose the tournament, you go to the cash, you're obviously not in a great frame of mind when you first sit down. So I never like to do that either.
That's a good point.
But but for you being a local guy, to me, sometimes there's a great local tournament. Like the last 3 or 4 days here, they've had, you know, a 500 at Hard Rock, a 450 at Derby, another, like, those are great tournaments for you being the local, you know, guy to play. Those are great tournaments, and your ROI in those tournaments can make you a good living playing those tournaments. Other days, you know, the best tournament of the day might be like and you're gonna have to help me here, but, you know, maybe the 160 nightly or the 200 nightly that gets 50, 80 people is like the best tournament of the day. And to me, I've always thought, as someone who's trying to make a living playing poker, on those days, you'd be better off playing in the 2-5 game or the 5-10 cash game, because I feel like if you did each one of those for 100 straight days, I feel like you would do better in 100 days of 2-5 than you would in 100 days of like a smaller type nightly tournament. But again, that's just me.
I agree. On the days when there's no value tournaments, and when I say no value, it's any tournament that's 20 minutes or less. It's the variance is going to be amped up, and it's going to favor luck more than skill. Like, your skill edge goes out the window. Not that you don't have edge, but you still have edge. But like the triple stack at Hard Rock, the 180 triple stack, it becomes a shove fest towards the end. Those are Becker's bread and butter, by the way. He was crushing them in Tampa, but not getting any recognition. Me and him were like, you know, firing everything. But yeah, you make sense.
But I mean, when the buy-in's like a 160, or, you know, again, I don't know what they all are now. I don't keep track, but I see some of them sometimes 150, sometimes 200. Like in that range, I just feel like the value, you have to win so often to like be really making decent money. You know, where in the cash games, I feel like you could, you know, again, just do better than you would in those. And again, totally different when it's these $400 and $500 tournaments they've had the last 3 or 4 days, where first place is 20 or 30K, or, you know, whatever it is, you know, those kind of things. Then I think the tournaments override your potential in the cash. You know.
Agree, 100%. Me and Danny Lobato, we did the math. He asked me, he's like, how much you're averaging a win rate in the 180, the triple stack, the 20-minute levels.
Right.
They have them at Hard Rock like 3-4 times a week.
Right.
So I did the math. From like January to June, I was up like maybe like $1,100 or $1,200, something I could made in a 2-5 game in like 2 days of play.
That's my point.
That validates your point. Let's go to some of the questions. We have a long list. What's your advice for somebody that's like first timer going to the WSOP as far as setting up their account? What's the best place to stay as far as food, as far as mental game? So everything WSOP. And even if they've been a few times, what's your best advice? Since you're a WSOP veteran, you know all the ins and outs, all the places to eat. And how do you keep sane after grinding? Like, I mean, you don't miss anything. You're like, you have a schedule like Negrano, you fire at everything. So what's the best way to approach it as far as mental game, how to set yourself up for success? As far as depositing money the first time you go out there to buy, you know, at the kiosks, just walk us through all that step by step.
Okay. You know, this is definitely something I'm passionate about, because I love the World Series, and that 2 months is my favorite 2 months of the year. As for where to stay, just my personal, and I'm not saying this is correct, I like to be on property, just because I play so much, just to be able to go up to your room on a break, you know, in between tournaments. You know, sometimes I'll play a day 2 of something that started at noon. I'll get knocked out at 2 o'clock, and then my next tournament might not be for 2 hours. Well, I like to go have somewhere I can go and maybe take a quick nap or relax. So I definitely think for me, being on property is very important. I stay at the Horseshoe now. Last couple of years, most of the time I'm there. You know, for other people that, you know, maybe they have family with them, or they like to cook meals, which I don't ever cook meals. You know, getting an Airbnb is fine too. But to me, that just adds more complexity for me, and I'm not gonna cook meals, and I have to deal with the traffic. And again, I don't have anywhere to go in a quick break. So stay at the Horseshoe, which I think is fine, or Paris, obviously, or any of the hotels where you can walk is great. For setting up the money, that's a huge thing now. They have the Bravo Poker Live, which they started maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I'm normally a cash guy, but I wire in money to the World Series, at least like about half of the money that I plan on playing for the summer. And then the first day, you just go and confirm your wire with the cage, and they put it into your Bravo Live Poker account. And you can basically sign up for any tournament on your phone. And then you just go to the kiosk they have and print out your tournament ticket and go right to your table. I mean, it couldn't possibly be any easier, except for maybe 15 minutes when I'm just confirming that first wire. I don't wait in a line the whole summer, no matter what I play. And that doesn't matter what your status is. There's like the diamond line and this line and that line. There are no lines if you do it like this. And it's so easy, you know.
When you wire, is there a timeline? Like, do you do it a couple days before you go out there? Or
I do it like 10 days before I go out there, and then it might just, you know, sits. And maybe the last 3 or 4 years I've done that, and I've never had any problem at the cage at all with that. So.
And where do you get the routing and bank number? Do they have this information?
KevMath posts that on Twitter, or if you just Google, 2024 WSOP wiring information, it'll come up, and the whole thing comes up. I just take that page and show it to the guy at the bank, and then all the information's right there for him to set up the wire.
Shout out to KevMath.
Yeah.
Do you know his handle on? I think it's at KevMath or Kevin Mathers. Anyway,
yeah, I think it's at KevMath. I think, but either way, people can find him. They know him. Anybody watching this knows who KevMath is.
Yeah, the people that are in deep in poker. So you do wiring, you go out there, you make sure the wire goes through, and then you buy in through the Bravo app. Walk us through how do you buy in through the Bravo app? You have to log in first, right?
Yeah,
and
it's just an app. You just log into the app, and then basically there's just a list of tournaments on there, and you just click whichever one you want to enter. You enter it takes the money right out of your account, and then when you go to the kiosk, you put your rewards card through the kiosk, and it just shows up that you're entered this tournament, and click here to print the ticket. It prints it right out of the machine. So,
well said.
You asked in the original question, like what I do to prepare.
Yeah,
one of the things that I think I do. I mean, I take it very seriously. You know, I'm not a partier. You know, there'll be friends of theirs. Hey, we're going to have beers tonight. You know, maybe one night or maybe 2 nights during the whole World Series of 7 weeks, I'll do something like that when I know I don't have to go till a little bit late the next day or something. But I'm very focused. I tease you a little bit about being kind of overly focused at the table, and I like to joke and kid around. But when it comes to like my time away from the table, when I'm playing 70 hours a week at the World Series, I'm very focused on that, making sure I get my rest, making sure I relax, you know, making sure my time spent away from the table is spent kind of recharging, relaxing instead of partying or doing other things.
That's my next question is your focus at the table. But right now we're just talking about prep. So you deposit the money, you like to stay at the Horseshoe, no partying, which I'm the same way. I didn't have a drink in Vegas the last couple of years. Just, you know, grind, sleep. How's your sleep when you go out there? It's very dry. The air is very dry. You sleep well in the hotel?
Yeah, it doesn't bother me. It's one of the things I'm lucky in life about. I just don't have problems sleeping. Like when it's time to sleep, I can just sleep. I might wake up once in the night, you know, get up to go pee. Nowadays, as I get older, that happens, you know, more often. But I can just go right back to sleep. Something can wake me up, and I can go right back to sleep. I get my 8 hours a night, you know, approximately. And I think it's very important to do. If you're trying to do what I do, and you're trying to do it on 4 or 5 hours sleep, and you know you're doing other things in Vegas, and you're up late playing craps or drinking or whatever you're doing, then I really think that detracts from your
ROI.
overall ROI experience, you know, whatever you want to call it.
Okay, so now you're set up, you got the hotel, you got the wire and everything. What's the strategy in those big fields? What's your mental game going in? Like, are you playing tight early? How are you playing different stages of the tournament? And when you look at the screen and you see every tournament has you play a lot of mixed games, so the mixed games don't have big fields. But some of the all the Hold'em events have you see 5,000, 6,000 entries. What's your approach to big fields like that?
So some of the mixed games, the 1500s get those kind of fields, not 5,000, but the horse, the 08, some of the tournaments like that get 1,000 to 1,200 people. So those are still, you know, relatively big fields where you can kind of, you know, I'm answering the question for both of those. You really can't think of it like you're trying to beat 6,000 people or 1,000 people. To me, that's just not how to think about it. The only thing you really control is how well you play the next hand. So I'm always trying to think in the moment. I'm about as far ahead as I ever get. If I'm getting kind of that, you know, itchiness that we sometimes get, like, man, this has been a long day, I'll look up, see when the next break is. And then I just make it my goal to just play the best I can until that break. And then, you know, you try to just kind of recharge on the break, even though it's only a 15-minute break. And then you go back like you're starting the day again and try to make it a point to just be a little bit fresher when you go back.
So you're just taking it step by step, every break at a time,
Even when people ask me about the WSOP schedule, they always say to me, oh, I'm coming into town this weekend. What events are you going to be playing? I have no idea. I haven't even looked. I might have looked when the schedule came out, but it's Wednesday or whatever. Is today Wednesday, Carl? Today's Wednesday, right?
I'm the same way. Yes, it is. It's actually Tuesday. It's
Tuesday. I only missed by one day. Not bad.
Story
if
checked
we're at
out.
the World Series and you ask me what I'm playing on Friday, I have no idea. It depends what else I'm in. I just wake up and I look and I say, okay, we're playing this today.
I'm the same way. I just wake up that day, look at the schedule, and I'm like, okay, I'm playing this. Yeah, I'm the same way. So what's
especially for me, because I play so many different things too. I don't have to worry about oh, maybe I'm going to go to the Win today or whatever. I mean, during the WSOP, I'm WSOP only. I don't go to the Win. I don't go to the Ari. I don't go anywhere else. That's it.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yep.
So just horseshoe pairs. That's it. You don't go Win. You don't go Venetian.
Not during the World Series. No, I mean other times a year if I'm out there I will. But part of that is I just always wanted to win a bracelet. It was originally the first couple of years I went before I did win one. That was like one of my main goals. So obviously you can't win a bracelet at the Win, so I didn't go there. Now I've gotten into the Daniel Negreanu's fantasy poker league the last couple of years, and I've drafted myself on my team both times. And basically that's a volume-based thing, and you're getting points for every event. You cash in, you final table. Obviously you win. It's a laddering, more points for the better you do. But obviously the more tournaments you're playing, the more chance you have of getting points for that too. So because of that, it's kind of really not let me leave the WSOP the last few years and play probably more than I was playing before that.
You just handled basically one of the questions from Eric Williams, the dealer at Hard Rock.
Yep.
He asked it on Twitter. He said, asking about Daniel Negreanu's 25K fantasy league, explain some of the basics for those who may not know, which I may not. I don't understand how fantasy works. So explain in like layman's terms to somebody that's not familiar with fantasy. How does it work exactly?
It's a really fun thing that makes the whole experience better. There's a website for it. It's 25kfantasy.com. So you can go to that website and see results from other years and kind of get an idea of how it works. But the short version is it's the big league, which is Negreanu's league that he does. There's a few smaller ones, but his league is a 25K entry fee. Last year, I believe it had 18 teams. And you draft it kind of like fantasy football, but it's an auction draft where you get 200 mythical dollars to be bidding with.
Okay.
So they bring up a player, let's just say they say, okay, Carl Mann. Around the room, the 18 teams will go, I'll take him for $1, I'll take him for $2, I'll take him for $5, I'll take him for $7, whatever it's going to be. And then the last guy says, I get Carl Mann for 11, going once, going twice, and then you're on my team for 11 of my $200.
Interesting.
You get 8 players on your team, and then basically how those 8 players, depending on how they do in all the WSOP events, I don't want to get too specific for the people that don't know, but obviously the better you do, the more points you're getting. So it gives me 7 other guys to root for and support, and they're supporting me, and you kind of have, adds a little bit of a team aspect to it. Just makes it more fun. It gives you a little more sweat. And my team came 3rd last year out of 18 teams, which was good. So I made some good money on that with all the side bets I had and everything. So it was great last year.
So is it winner take all or who wins?
No, we came 3rd last year and got 75K, and it was a 25K entry. I think first place might have been 150, something like that.
So how many spots are paid?
I think it was 4 out of 18 they paid last year, and the 4th spot was 50K.
4 out of 18, and the 75K you won, that goes to your pocket 100%, or you split it with?
Yeah, I had 50% of the action. I sold. My buddy RJ came with me at the draft. He had 20% of it. And then what I do is I sell back to the players to kind of incent them a little bit. So I offer them to buy, say, 3, 4, 5% each of the team. So then they feel a part of it, and they're obviously more incentive. They have more incentive to play, and again, we get the kind of team cheering for each other thing going, which I think is kind of fun.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, now this is the first time I know how it works.
Yeah.
So WSOP first timer, you covered that. Food, lodging. Okay, how are you dealing with different stages of the tournament? How are you playing the early levels, mid levels, and like the late levels when it's down to like 2-3 tables? What's your overall strategy?
That that depends quite a bit on whether the tournament's a a re-entry or a freeze out. If it's a freeze out, obviously I'm going to be playing slightly anyway tighter at the beginning. I'm still looking for the people that are playing too tight, and maybe try to bully them a little bit because they know they can't buy back in, and et cetera, et cetera. I'm generally trying to play tighter in the early stages. Obviously in a re-entry tournament, I'm not going to go too crazy, but if there's a time to get all in and it's a flip, I'm certainly going to do that. Just because I think the value of having a double stack or a triple stack early in the tournament like that, I think that's one of my better qualities. I know how to push people around when I get that stack. Obviously in a re-entry it helps you get that, which is why a lot of people complain that the re-entries are better for the pros.
Not many freeze outs in the WSOP schedule, right? Maybe
there's a few more this year, but some of the you're asking me a question just overall. The limit events that I play, like Omaha 8 or better or Stud, those are all freeze outs, and even though they're limit, you still will play tighter, a little bit tighter in the beginning, because the chips you're losing at that point are more important than the chips you're gaining. That's a known theory that I don't totally agree with, but I think is for sure there's something to that. You obviously can lose in the first few levels. You can't win the tournament the first few levels. So when it's a freeze out, try to be a little bit more conservative.
Tells, what tells do you rely on the most, as far as what's the tell that made you the most money? I asked that question to Becker and he gave me nothing.
I don't know if I can give you one that makes you the most money, but if I'm generally not a huge tell person, but definitely betting tells and how people bet, especially the more amateur the player. Usually, if they're say their normal bring in is a 2.5x, and now all of a sudden they 3.5x or they 4x it. That's usually a hand that they think is a good hand, but they're scared of, like the pocket jacks, pocket tens of the world. I feel like you can narrow their ranges quite a bit by, their raise amount. A lot of times people will differ it without even realizing they're doing it, and that can be a pretty big tell, I think. For me, obviously, again, we talked about I'm very talkative and at the table, and I'm always having fun, and part of that is I think I'm very good at talking people into telling me things. That makes sense. That could be during a hand or even pre-hand.
I attest to that.
A lot of times that I'm, goofing around, having a good time, it really is genuine. I do enjoy talking and, trying to be funny at the table, but I'm also learning from that while I'm doing things with people, and people will tell me things while we're having those conversations that are, that are really, really help a lot. Especially in a hand, it's a question you always see people ask. It's kind of, but when you ask people, will you show me if I fold? Just something simple like that. Like how they answer that question can tell you a lot depending on the person. If I'm saying that to you, you're not going to give me anything when I say that. But if I'm saying that to the average Joe or amateur player, a lot of times they'll literally tell you if they want you to call or not. So if
somebody says yes, I'll show, what's your reaction? If somebody says no, I won't show, what's your reaction?
I mean, sometimes it's how they say it. Sometimes they look really nervous, or whatever. But typically, if they say they're not going to show, that means they have a good hand. And typically, if they say, "Oh yeah, I'll show you," that just means they're happy or full. I'll do anything. If you just fold, I'll
So if they said I'll show, means they don't have it.
No, yeah, because they're wanting you to fold. You're telling them, "Hey, look, I'm going to fold my hand. Will you show me yours?" And then if they look really, especially if they're really excitedly saying yes to that, that means they're happy you're folding, and they're happy to show you their cards, or happy to do whatever, buy you a drink, whatever it's going to be.
Makes sense.
So
basically, they're trying to be nice to you to fold. To actually,
I mean, not everyone. There's people that do reverse tells. You have to watch, but I'm talking about the average general guy.
As far as body language, what are you looking for mostly?
I'm not huge on a body language thing, honestly. I mean, you can.
Really? I thought you'll be the opposite. I thought you're really a tells guy.
Nah, I mean, again, I'm more of a verbal tells guy. I think a lot of that is just individual. You'll every now and then just notice something that someone did in another hand where they, they were chatty like me, let's say, and then they got all quiet, when they had a big hand, things like that. For motion tells and where your hands are, and if your heart is beating and things like that. That's just not me. I just don't get into a lot of that.
You were always verbal at the table, or this is something?
I think so. It's just my personality in general. I'm the guy you could invite to a dinner with, 8 different people, and I'm the outsider where I don't know any of the people, and I'm still gonna talk just as much as everyone else and be involved in the conversation, and etc.
What's going on through your head during the hand? You're doing the math, you're calculating the pot size, the bet sizes, and you're calculating odds throughout the hand, or
yeah,
no?
a lot of that. I'm very lucky that, again, with my math background, a lot of that comes super natural to me. Just kind of tangenting off of that, people ask me a lot of times, like, I really want to get better at poker. I really want to, I'm thinking about getting into it. Like, what do I need to do, or what do I need to have? Oh, I start with three things that I think at our stage of life, let's say, anything past 30 years old, if you're not good at math and you're 30 years old, you're not going to learn it. And it's very important in poker. You can't just go say, like, oh, I want to get better at math so I can be a better poker player. Like, it's not going to happen. You either are good or you're not. Being patient in general, again, very important. If you're a 30-year-old person and you're not patient yet, it's a little bit more controllable than the math, but it's really hard to learn patience. You're either you can be a patient person or you're not. And then the last one is just what we were talking about, reading people and understanding what they're saying to you, and remembering what their actions are from other hands and how it'll affect this next hand, and kind of putting that all together. I just call that reading people in general. Not necessarily all about tells, but just understanding who you're playing and the categories they fall into, like the tags and lags and all this kind of stuff that everyone talks about. All that's very important. It's very hard to learn if you're not good at listening to someone and understanding who they are and how they play. Then it's hard to learn that. So those 3 things I think are very important. So patience, math, people reading skills. If you don't have at least 2 out of 3 of those, and you can't tell me, I've got 2 out of 3 of those, and I usually say, poker probably not going to be for you.
Patience is a big one for tournaments, especially big fields. You can't get, like you said it early, itchy. You can't get itchy at the table. Patience is a huge factor, and I think being like happy and in a good mood at the table affects it a lot, because sometimes, I don't know what it is, some days I sit at the table and I know right away I'm not going to make a deep run. Something would be happening outside, or any like other factors affecting you outside of poker. Those days, you're not going to make a deep run, because tournament sticks, you're sitting at the table with 7 other guys, nothing interesting is happening. So patience is a huge thing for sure. Mental game, that brings us to mental game, which patience falls into it too. Any rituals outside of poker? Do you work out? Sleep? We discuss sleep. Like, any tricks up your sleeve as far as mental game on the table and off the table? Like, players these days are like athletes. Back in the day, in the 80s and stuff, they ate bad, they smoked at the table, most of them were obese, overweight. These days, all the high rollers, you don't see one that's overweight. They're like literally like athletes. Most of them do yoga, work out. So what's the mental game off the table and on the table? Yeah,
it's definitely not a strength of mine. I mean, I don't work out. I've been, 55. I've been lucky to be, I say happy and healthy my whole life. I've never had any like physical ailments or issues. I think, like I said to you before, I think the rest is very important, and I'm good at that part of it. The eating, I'm not a good eater at all, just in general. I eat fast foods, and I definitely don't watch my calories or eat all the stuff that you're talking about people eat. One thing I do at the World Series, there's a company called Overnight Oats, and a poker player runs it. They send you overnight oats. It's called, or oats. It might be oats overnight. I forget which way. The oats overnight or overnight oats, if you Google it. They send you packages of oats with all like the healthy stuff, and it's got chia seeds in it and all this, all the healthy stuff that I would never eat otherwise. And they call it oats overnight because you make it the night before. You basically just put the package into a cup, put milk in there, shake it up, put it in the refrigerator, and then it kind of like sets overnight. And then you wake up in the morning, it's just right there for you. And it's basically an oats milkshake. And to me, that's about as healthy as I'll ever eat in the morning. It's got like 20 or 30 grams of protein, each one, all kinds of different flavors. And so for me, that's something I do during the World Series, just because at least it gets my day off to a decent start, eating something reasonable instead of going and getting 6 Krispy Kreme donuts or like my usual breakfast.
Okay, so that's a next question. Players that are hard to play against, and you've played against all of them. Like, you played Negrano, Hellmuth.
Yeah, I mean,
you played all the top dogs. Who was the player or 2 players that you think they were the toughest to play against?
There's so many to list. I mean, just from an experience I had this summer, I played with Stephen Chidwick almost all of day 2 in a tournament, and then also at the final table later on in the tournament. So I played basically like 2 or a day and a half, with him. And I really try to watch a lot of what he does because I've always really respected him as probably a top 10 player in the world. And I had played with him a couple times before, but not for long, extended periods in a big tournament like that. So he's definitely one. Sean Deeb, somebody I really look up to because he plays, I think, all the games really well, and that's what I strive to do. And I try to say I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. And he's kind of the same way, except for the part of he's a master of a few of them. He's so good at all the games. He could sit down with the best no-limit players and hold his own, and yet he's arguably the best mixed game player, in the world, or one of them. Negreanu too. I enjoyed. I've always been a fan of Negreanu because of what he does for poker. People come and ask him to, take a picture, and he'll get up in between hands and take a picture or sign the autograph or whatever, which is, we're talking about the focus thing. He's still able to stay focused. Obviously, he's had a great career. Still do things like that for the public, and he's very chatty at the table. So, I enjoy playing with him and really respect his game a lot, especially in the mixed games. And I also respect that I feel like he's gone back into the study streets on No Limit Hold'em. And I'm not saying he's like, now a No Limit Hold'em genius or anything, but I think he's realized that he fell behind, some of these new younger kids like you're talking about. And he's done what he can anyway to at least catch up somewhat, depending on what you think. I don't know how much, but he's definitely at least trying, and he's definitely, I think, improved his No Limit Hold'em game, which is hard to do after playing for years and years.
Well said. I think the match with Doug Polk, he kind of that put things in perspective of how much he's lagging behind the new age players. And most players were like, or most people said, oh, DNX is going to destroy Doug Polk. And Doug Polk is the epitome of somebody that studied, and Negreanu is the epitome of an old school field player. And obviously they played online, and there's some feel online, like some timing tells, but you can't look at the person, and and that's what he's all about. So that match showed him that he's lagging behind, and he did a lot of studying, and he stayed relevant, which is something it's hard to do for sure.
Yeah, and I relate myself to him in many ways. We have the same kind of outgoing personality at the table.
Agree.
I mean, he's obviously arguably the most famous poker player in the world, or certainly in the top 3 or 5. I'm nowhere near that, but I'm sort of like a mini version of him at the levels that I play. From years played. We both played No Limit Hold'em at the start. We both played mixed games now. A lot of that is so I see what he's doing with the No Limit Hold'em now, and it makes me feel like I need to start studying or getting back to studying more, which I don't do a lot of, and I've done a little bit more of the last year or so. So